This video is now in session, and in yesterday's video we talked about Pelosi and as well as Josh Gottheimer related to the infrastructure issue. So to recap on that issue, it was a demand that 9 centrist Democrats brought up, headed by Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey's 11th District. I believe 11th District, if we go here, 5th District. So it was brought up by Josh Gottheimer, and the main premise of this was that he wanted the budget deal passed after the infrastructure bill, after the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and 8 other centrists signed on to that plan, including Stephanie Murphy of Florida. But progressives, a lot of progressives, which far outnumber the centrists, the 9 centrists, were asking for the budget deal to be passed before the infrastructure deal. And that was the main problem that Pelosi had to face. So in yesterday's video, we brought up the topic of how there are divisions from the moderate and the progressive side. And there are still divisions. There will be divisions because both sides have fundamentally different views and both sides have fundamentally different constituents. But we were in some ways, I guess, corrected by Pelosi in terms of masking those divisions, because Pelosi has done a good job of masking the divisions, and Pelosi has done a good job of negotiating with both sides to get something on the books, to get something on the table, and she was able to do that yesterday. She was able to, actually 2 days ago, she was able to get the infrastructure and budget deal problem fixed, and it was mainly because she forced a vote. She forced a vote on the budget deal, and basically what she said was that the budget deal will pass now, but the infrastructure deal will pass by September 27th. And many of the centrists folded and caved into what Pelosi wanted. But that is a testament, I guess, to Pelosi's entire tenureship as speaker, because while she is incredibly unpopular and while she is definitely a Washington insider, as many people claim she is, a lot of things that she doesn't get commended for are based on her negotiation tactics, based on her being able to hold the caucus together. She was able to do that between 2018 and 2020 because she unified her entire House caucus against Donald Trump, and then after 2020, when Donald Trump stepped out of the presidency, Pelosi started doing backdoor negotiations with a lot of these centrists and progressives, and centrists and progressives these days have been convinced by Pelosi and to some extent Majority Leader Schumer that Democrats need to pass stuff now, that it's important to pass things now before time runs out, because in 2008 to 2010, Democrats learned a lesson, which is that if you don't go big, if you don't do enough within those first 2 years, then you're going to irreparably suffer in the midterm election. And while our claim that Democrats will still most likely lose the midterm election still stands, if Pelosi and Schumer are able to keep doing these backroom strategies related to reconciliation, and if they're able to keep members in line, then that would certainly help at least blunt the dissent from leadership in the House in 2022. But that's based on more deals passing, and that's still based on these 2 bills passing, the budget bill and the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill likely will pass. At this point, it's almost destined to pass the House, but the budget bill is the main problem for the Democrats at this moment. Kyrsten Sinema said that she would not support the $3.5 trillion budget bill that was proposed by a lot of progressive Democrats. She said she was not open to negotiation on that. And as a result, it's likely that Chuck Schumer will have to negotiate with Kyrsten Sinema on a smaller budget plan, smaller than $3.5 trillion, because at this point, Kyrsten Sinema has shown that she has no incentive in getting progressive bills done, that she does not want progressive bills done. And a lot of people are questioning why. A lot of people question why she isn't able to get like a progressive bill done, even though she won in 2018 by a pretty large margin in Arizona. She won by 3.4 percentage points. She won by a majority of the vote, well, just about a majority of the vote. And the truth about this is simply politics. Kirsten Sinema, she comes from a state of Arizona, and Arizona, before Sinema, had ruby red politics. So her justification is that because she is not as well known as people like Mark Kelly, she needs to make herself well known, but she also has to make herself a conservative Democrat. Bear in mind that Kirsten Sinema, by the way, we did this in another video about who Kirsten Sinema is. She used to be a progressive. When she was at lower levels of government, including the Arizona House of Representatives, she was a progressive. She was actually a member of the Green Party. But as she's ascended the ranks, she's kind of done what the opposite of what Kirsten Gillibrand has done. Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. Where Sinema has started to increasingly highly regarded bipartisan measures and working with the other side, and that's what basically is her ethos coming into the Senate. So that we made a video on that about who Kirsten Sinema is. So that's a completely separate video. But in terms of Nancy Pelosi, in terms of Chuck Schumer, both of them are great negotiators, and that's the thing that will most likely define Pelosi's legacy, which is her ability to keep her caucus together, because she has a very, very big tent caucus. Many people don't deny that she has a big tent caucus. She has both conservative Democrats like Jared Golden, and as well as Abigail Spanberger and Connor Lamb, but then she also has establishment candidates like establishment Democrats like Steny Hoyer, or Jerry Nadler, or I guess I mean, there are a bunch of establishment Democrats that are not as well known, but still a pretty big faction. Alcee Hastings, another example, the late Alcee Hastings, and as well as people like Jim McGovern. But she also has very progressive. She also has very progressive members. She has Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then she also has Katie Porter. She has from Missouri's 1st District, Cori Bush. And these three kinds of factions tied together all have different visions, competing visions, and competing interests for their constituents. Now, for the Republican side, you may think, how doesn't this extend to the Republican side? For the Republican side, what Trump has been able to do with the Republican side is unify the entire Republican base by fear, the Republican caucus by instilling fear. Because if you step out of Trump's way, if you go out of line, he will punish you electorally speaking. But what Pelosi does with Democrats in power is she does backroom negotiations with a lot of these representatives. Because for the Democratic side, they can't really do that kind of fear-mongering that Trump has been able to instill on his caucus. For the Democrats, they have to do something different, which is why Pelosi has been so commended for being able to do backroom negotiations. It's because in 2018 to 2020, we saw initially divisions between the progressives and the moderates before Pelosi calmed those divisions down. We've seen a lot of these inter-party divisions happen before, and the fact that Pelosi is residing over a very slim majority, and the fact that she's still able to get a lot of things done with that slim majority is still pretty notable. In the Senate, Chuck Schumer, the fact that he has just exactly the majority that he needs is also commendable as to how he has been able to negotiate with both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate to get the bills passed. Now, that's not to say that the bills are good or bad. We're not endorsing bills. We're not endorsing against bills. But we're just stating that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi usually don't get credit for these kinds of things, and it is a very thankless job to have to try to combine two competing views together. It's hard to do that. For the Senate, it's hard to get Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders to agree on much. In the House, it's hard to get it's hard to get Jared Golden or Cherry Bustos or Cindy Axne to agree with people like Ocasio-Cortez or Katie Porter or other progressives. So the fact that Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have been able to do that, even though it makes them look more like Washington insiders, Republicans should definitely start to look towards Pelosi in terms of her negotiation tactics and see how she is able to govern, because that will be useful come 2022. 2022 is going to be a major year for Democrats. I mean, at this point, every future election, every midterm election gets more and more impactful for some reason, but this midterm election is going to be pretty impactful in terms of whether Joe Biden will be able to do anything or not come for the next congressional session. But with this kind of governing, if Nancy Pelosi is able to get other things passed, if she's able to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, or I guess if Chuck Schumer is able to get a voting rights bill passed, if Nancy Pelosi gets climate change proposals passed, if she gets economic proposals passed but within this congressional session, and if Joe Biden continues to not mess up on Afghanistan and on foreign issues, then Democrats have a better chance of at least not losing the same amount of seats that they did in 2010. In fact, they could probably lose less seats than they did in 2014 if they try super hard from now all the way till 2022. But as explained in tomorrow's video, that's going to be hard because a lot of things are just not in their controls. One of them is COVID. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.